Hello, everybody. I am excited to be here with you on this great Wednesday afternoon, evening. I am coming into this live stream hot. So I left my office at 5:10, and I literally just got to my house 2 minutes ago. What normally is a 30-minute trip took 50 minutes. It's been raining and yucky accidents. It was just a mess trying to get home. And I don't know what the weather is like where you are, but it has been yucky here in Georgia, North Metro Atlanta for the past month. It's just been groomy, gray, gloomy, wet, rainy, misty. I feel like we have not seen sunshine since before Christmas, and it's getting to me. I don't know what the weather is like where you are, but I swear it feels like we're living like in Seattle or something right now. I'm just not used to this weather. So definitely am wishing and hoping for sunshiny day. But welcome to the live stream. I'm Sarah Maslowski with KeyPoint Homes Group, and we go live most Wednesday evenings at 6 o'clock to answer all of your questions about moving to Georgia. We have guest speakers that come on as well. And so tonight's live stream is going to be all about our most frequently asked questions that we get from people just like you that are considering moving here to Georgia. And some of these questions we get so frequently, where it's like, we've made videos about it, but why not come on here and answer those again for you and give you some more detailed answers and answer your questions that you may have that we have not thought of to answer. So if you're watching us, I'd love to know where you're watching from. So please drop me a comment below. I'd love to know where you're watching from. And of course, if you have any questions about Georgia, moving to Georgia, buying a house, that is what this live stream is all about. So I talked to you about moving to Georgia, and talked to you about how frustrating it was to get home this afternoon. Just to give you another little life update, I filmed these videos. This is the basement of our house, and we are actually renovating our house. And so we're renovating our entire upstairs. So my whole family, I say my family, my husband and my 3 dogs are just on the other side of this wall because we're living in our basement and living through this renovation. So I'm interested to see how this live stream is going to go and how noisy my dogs are going to be, and if you hear my dogs. So this will be a great test. It's our first live stream since starting this renovation. I'm curious to know if you've ever renovated your home before, or if you've ever lived through that in a house while they're renovating. Last week was the demo piece of our entire upstairs, and that was a fun adventure. So we have a house that was built in the 1960s. It was a brick ranch on a basement. Obviously, our basement is finished, but it was finished, I think, in the 70s. It definitely looks like it was finished in the 70s. But one thing that we discovered in this renovation process was that the tile that they did in the bathrooms upstairs was like put on like this thick mortar concrete. And so whenever they started demoing that, we realized that there was not a subfloor underneath that brick mortar concrete. So every time they like jackhammered that up or got it up, all the fine dust particles and bits and pieces of that concrete like fell through the individual boards into the basement, like into the area that we're living. So we had to live through that and clean that up, and that was not fun, but we made it through. So we got people watching from NYC, we got someone in Gwinnett, and we have another person watching from New York as well. Hi, thank you for being here and watching. We have helped or spoken to a lot of people recently from New York, so I can imagine you're wanting to escape that bitter cold and maybe think about moving to a warmer climate. So I am going to jump right in to giving you some more information on the frequently asked questions that we get from people from all over the country that are thinking about moving right here to Georgia. And of course, while I'm going through this, if you have any questions in the moment, go ahead and ask that question. I would love to answer that for you. Okay, so the first question that we get a lot of is, are there tornadoes? Well, yes. So that is one thing that you hear about in Georgia is tornadoes. And I have to tell you, as someone that grew up in Georgia, Can y'all hear my dogs in the background? They're barking. As someone that has grown up my entire life in Georgia, we briefly lived outside of Georgia, but tornado warnings are a thing here. So you're going to have thunderstorms. You're going to have conditions that make it ripe for tornadoes. And for sure, there are tornadoes that happen. I just have to tell you that I've personally never experienced a tornado while living my almost 40 plus years here in Georgia. So it's not to say that they don't happen, but it's not, I don't think, as common of an occurrence as what you might see in the Midwest. It's not common to have like tornado shelters or anything like that. Some towns have tornado siren systems, but it's just not something that's that common. So I think it's something that we think is a more perceived threat than what it actually is living here, or at least that's what my experience has been having grown up in Georgia. So let's see here. Air conditioning. This is a common question that we get from a lot of people that are living on the West Coast that are thinking about buying here in Georgia. And it's something that they comment on every time we go into houses. They're like, oh, it has air conditioning. And so I was with some clients from California 2 years ago. And finally I had to tell them, I was like, look, every house that we're going to see is going to have air conditioning. It's something that us Georgians could not live without. Also, every business that you go into, every store, everywhere is going to be air conditioned. We could not live without it. So you are definitely going to see air conditioners, and a lot of houses here will actually have 2 units like you see right here on this home. Typically, you'll see one of the units is going to cool the upstairs of the house, and one of the units is going to cool the downstairs. You'll also see this on homes with finished basements as well. 1 unit for the main level and 1 unit for the basement level. So good news, if you live in a place that doesn't have air conditioning, here in Georgia, you're always going to get air conditioning as just a standard feature in your house. Okay, this was a unique one to me. I had a client from California ask me, she said that it was a hard no, that she did not want her laundry room in the bathroom. And that one kind of took me by surprise. I don't know if this was something that happens on the West Coast. So if anyone's watching from California or where this is common in your area, please let me know because I'd love to. But I had to explain to her that no, having your laundry room in a bathroom is unheard of. And in fact, of all the years and hundreds of houses that we've sold, I have only shown 1 laundry room that had a bathroom in it. And actually, it wasn't necessarily a full bathroom. It was just a toilet. It was the strangest thing I've ever heard of. But I think in the Midwest, they might have this. If I'm not mistaken, they call it like a St. Louis toilet or something like that. I don't know. I'm butchering that. That's not what they call it. But I think in the Midwest, it's a thing where you have a toilet in your laundry room. And that's also just a little strange to me. So, but typically here, you are going to have a full laundry room. Oftentimes you'll see this off of the garage. And occasionally, sometimes you'll see this in older homes, like homes that were built in the 80s, where they will have the laundry facility kind of like in a hallway and a closet. But you don't have to worry about having your laundry room in the actual bathroom. So, so that's something interesting and unique. And I'd love to know if you're watching, if that is something that's common where you live, or if you've ever heard of that or seen that in any of your friends' home that you have visited. So if you have any questions while we're talking through this, please ask away. That's what we are here for. King's Home asked the question, can you discuss value in buying new versus used home in Georgia? This is a great question. So typically you can think of a new house kind of like a new car. A new house is always going to be worth more than a used house. However, there's going to be trade-offs with that, right? So with a new construction home, you are getting brand new everything. And you're also getting the warranty that comes along with buying that brand new home. Typically, though, the trade-off is that the square footage that you can afford in a new construction is likely going to be smaller than the square footage you could afford buying a used house. And that makes sense, right? You're kind of having a pros and cons, a trade-off. Those used homes are going to sell for a little bit less, but they've got to have something to entice you to buy that used home. Another thing that to take into consideration when we're talking about value versus new construction versus used houses is that land is at a premium here in the North Metro Atlanta area. So a developer, whenever they're building out a neighborhood, they want to put as many houses in there as they possibly can to like really make sure they're making all the money that they can off of you. So likely, depending on your price point, but most people that I work with and their price point, you are looking at a new construction development where the houses are pretty close together. So you're talking about a quarter of an acre to a third of an acre piece of land. And a lot of the trade-offs that I hear when I talk to clients is that they want a good house, but they don't want to be really close to their neighbor. And so if that's the case, then we often have to look at homes that were built a little bit later. So those houses you're going to find on bigger lots, more acreage. When I say acreage, half acre lots, sometimes a little bit more. It also depends on the area that you're looking. So there are some great growing areas that are still kind of small where they're building new construction on acre lots where you're going to get a little bit more for your money. So that is definitely something to take into consideration. Now, another unique thing that's happening in the market right now is that a lot of builders have inventory that they want to get rid of. And when I say get rid of, they want them off their books so they can start building more houses to sell. And we are seeing some builders offer some pretty aggressive incentives for buyers to buy new construction right now. So it's not uncommon to see a builder contribute $10,000 towards closing costs or saying, hey, here's $15,000. You can use that however you want. You can buy down the interest rate. You can use some of it to go towards closing costs. You can use some of it to buy appliances. We don't care how you use it, but here's the money and here's what you can do with it, what you want. You can even take it off the price of the house if you would like. So that's something to keep in mind, is that there's sometimes a little bit more negotiation room with the builder depending upon the market, like in today's market. Now, if you would have asked me that question a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that was unheard of, right? Builders could not keep up with the demand fast enough. So that is something to keep in mind. So there's pros and cons to new construction. If you're someone that doesn't ever want to do anything to your house and you just want a move-in ready house, you don't want to have to worry about doing any type of home maintenance or anything like that, then there's a lot of value there in new construction because you're not going to have to worry about that. But if yard size is important, having more square footage, if you want a home in a basement, that's really expensive on new construction as well. So those are some of the things that we kind of weigh the pros and cons on and look at that on a case-by-case basis. It also depends on where you're buying. King's Home also said most homes on Zillow for Georgia has closets and bathrooms. Oh, okay. Yeah. So occasionally, you'll see like a little linen closet. And so usually that's for storing, towels and sheets, linens. That's what they are, right? So you'll see that. And it's a helpful little closet that you'll see. You'll see a lot in a lot of new construction. Older homes that were built like in the 80s and stuff like that, it's kind of harder to find those linen closets and bathrooms, but it's a great storage place to hide stuff, especially when you have company coming over. You can just shove it all in the closet. All right, so going back to some of our other frequently asked questions, the due diligence period. So this is something that you need to know if you are considering buying a home in Georgia. So in our contracts, we have something that's known as the due diligence time period. It's a negotiable amount of time. In a normal market, in this market right now, that time period is usually between 7 to 10 days. And during this due diligence time period of the contract, it happens as soon as you go under contract. Like that's when your due diligence starts, the next day. And this is the time period that you have as a buyer to inspect the house. I always recommend that we get a great certified home inspector that we have great connections with to go in and inspect that home from top to bottom. But during this time period, from between the 7 to 10 days, you as a buyer can terminate your contract. You can back out of it for any reason. It doesn't even have to be inspection related. You don't even have to have your inspection yet. You could wake up the next morning and get cold feet and say, yeah, this isn't the house for me. Or you could put something under contract and then the next day your dream home goes on the market and you can back out of that contract and get something else. So from a seller's perspective, they want this due diligence time period to be as short as possible because they're nervous, right? They want to see if you, as a buyer, they're going to want to know what comes up in the home inspection. They're going to want to know what you ask for in terms of trying to negotiate repairs. They also want to get through that time period because they don't want you backing out of the contract. So just know, though, that we kind of have a built-in grace period in the contract to really make sure that you like the home and to make sure that we have plenty of time to do any type of inspections on the home. So that's always something good that you should know whenever you are thinking about buying a house. This is a really great question from Tony. How much does land home surveys cost and how long do they take? So in the state of Georgia, in this metro Atlanta area, it's not very common to have a survey done of your land. And the reason why is that typically almost all of these homes are in neighborhoods for the most part, and your boundaries are pretty clearly defined. So you have a plat map that is recorded with the county that is part of the purchase of the house. But most people don't pay to have an independent surveyor done because a survey has already been done, 5, 10, 20 years ago, however long the house was developed. Now, in some certain instances, if you're buying acreage, if you're buying a lot of land, that might be something that you want to have considered done. It depends upon the size of the land, but typically you're looking at about $1,000 or so, give or take. And that is something that can take a couple of weeks to get done. So in instances where we are needing to have a survey done of land, that's a scenario where we would write special language into the contract that we have some special stipulations around the outcome of that survey in order for us to move forward with that purchase. Now, another more inexpensive thing that you can do if you don't want to have a full-blown survey done, you can pay a surveyor to come out and flag the property. That's where they're going to locate all 4 corners of the property and they're going to flag the boundaries for you. And that's a much more cost-effective thing to do, usually around a couple $100. And that can be done much faster as it doesn't involve as much equipment or research. So that's something to keep in mind, but a great question that is related to that. You would want to have that done during the due diligence time period. Also, something important to note is that this is something that is, because it's not typical here, it's not something that you would ask usually the seller to pay for, unless, let's say, we were buying 15 acres of land and they haven't had a recent survey done. Then in that case, we might negotiate for the seller to pay for that survey to be done. So great question. All right. The next thing that you need to know about buying a house in Georgia is that you take possession of the house the day that you close on the home. So the actual closing day when we go to an attorney's office. So in the state of Georgia, we are a closing attorney state. A closing attorney handles all of the title paperwork. It handles everything with the county, getting all the legal paperwork recorded. And so we actually go to a closing attorney's office. We sign all those papers, especially if you're getting a mortgage. That's a ton of papers that you have to sign. But keys are exchanged with the seller and you take possession of that house at closing. So you walk away from that table with the keys. The house is yours. It's empty. And that is the time that you celebrate, and you don't have to wait for any type of money to season or anything like that. I know that is common in some other states, but good news is that you get it the day of closing. Now, sometimes there is a time period where sometimes you might negotiate where the seller is able to stay in the house after closing, but that's a unique scenario. It was more common during the pandemic, but right now it's more of a unique scenario where sellers now they don't have quite the leverage that they had over the past 2 years, and they're not asking for that as much. So obviously, though, that's something that would be negotiated during the offer time period to make sure it's a win-win for everyone and that everyone's on the same page of when possession takes place for the house. Let's see here. We have another great question from Maxine. Thanks for watching and asking. Can you please discuss property tax assessments on new construction homes and how to pay your taxes if you don't include it in your mortgage? I love this question. So, property taxes are a funny thing. And so a good rule of thumb for most counties within the metro Atlanta area that I serve and that I make videos on is that the property taxes are usually about 1% of the purchase price. Sometimes they're less, Sometimes they're a little bit more if we're looking in areas like Alpharetta, Fulton County, Johns Creek, some of the more expensive areas to live. The property taxes may be a little bit more. The closing attorney is going to be part of that process where they're going to estimate what those property taxes are going to be. Now, you asked, how do you pay that if it's not included in your mortgage? So anytime you're putting down less than 20% on a home, the mortgage company is going to require that those property taxes be paid out of an escrow account that the mortgage company manages. So they're going to have you include, a little bit of your monthly payment every single month to go towards that yearly tax bill. And then when that yearly tax bill comes out, typically they come out in October of every year for most counties with the due date by the end of the year. The mortgage company is going to write that check directly to the property tax or assessor from that escrow account, and you don't have to do any money, right? But if you're paying cash for a home or you're putting down more than 20%, that mortgage servicer is going to give you the option of having you pay the property taxes. And if you pay the property taxes yourself, that is simply just you getting the bill in the mail. They tell you when it's due, and you either hand deliver that money to the tax assessor or you mail in that check for them. But a good rule of thumb is that 1% of the purchase price will be your property taxes. Now, like I said, that's not always the case. There's a lot of times where you get really lucky and the tax assessor does not value the home for what you actually paid for it. They give it an assessed value. So let's say that you purchased a home for $500,000, brand new construction. The tax assessor may assess that the value is $440,000. Now, is that home really worth $440,000? No, you just paid $500,000 for it. That was the fair market value. But they're tax assessors. They're not real estate agents. That's a lucky situation because they're only taxing you on $440,000 worth of value. Just know anytime that you go to buy or sell a house, that tax assessed value is never taken into consideration. Almost always that value that the tax assessor is given to your home is always going to be worth less than what you actually paid for it. Occasionally, you have some instances where that tax assessor will actually put the value of the home for what you actually paid for it. So I hope that answers your question, but definitely a really, really great question. All right, so going back to our frequently asked questions, trees. Surprisingly, we get a lot of comments or questions, maybe not so much questions, but comments on the amount of trees that there are here in Georgia. So that's a great thing because a lot of people are super excited and they're coming here because they want the trees. Obviously, this picture was taken during the fall, and you see those beautiful colors. That is a very accurate representation of what the trees look like here. If you are buying an older home, you're definitely going to have trees in your backyard. Backyard, side yard, new construction, you're going to get one tree. So they're required by county code to plant one tree in the yard. Sometimes you'll occasionally get like a lot that'll back up to a more wooded area for privacy reasons, or where the builder has left some trees. But just know, though, that you're going to see a lot of greenery, a lot of trees. With those trees come pollen every spring and summer, not spring and summer, spring and fall. Your car is going to be coated in a fine yellow dust. That's the pollen from the trees. You'll also be able to see on the lake or any type of water during that time period, like a film of yellow floating around the top. And typically we always have that happen when it feels really good outside. Like when you want to go sit outside on your patio, that's when the pollen is out there. And it's kind of frustrating because you got to wipe down your seat because it's going to get all over your clothes. But it's a small price to pay, or literally you might have to pay for some allergy medication like I do. I take a Zyrtec daily because of the lovely pollen and trees and everything that we have here. So as I'm going through this, again, if you have any questions about moving to Georgia or things that you've noticed, questions that you've had, I would love to answer those for you. Let's see here. Okay, we get questions about animals that we have here. Now, this isn't exhaustive by any means, but this is a good representation of the animals that we have here. So you're going to see possums. You're going to see raccoons. That's something that is common here. Deer are abundant. If you live anywhere near trees, you're going to see deer. And it's kind of cool. They're very peaceful and nice, but if you're driving through maybe some not so well lit areas at night, something to keep in mind is that you want to be mindful of deer because they'll just jump out in front of you. And knock on wood, I have never hit a deer growing up in Georgia, but it happens. And then last but not least on this picture is a picture of, this is a new addition to Georgia, and they came a couple of years ago. It's called a Joro spider, and it is an invasive species from China. I guess it came over on some shipping containers, made its way to Georgia. You'll see these spiders come out in the spring and fall, and they build these incredibly huge webs. They build webs very fast. You can knock down their spider webs one day and you'll come out the next day and they're right back up there. They're kind of hard spiders to kill, hence them being invasive. The good news is they do not bite. They're just kind of more of a nuisance. And so you'll see these, they'll form their webs on kind of like the corners of house, like near doorways. You'll see them on power lines. You'll see them everywhere for a time period. And it's like you just have to like get through this time period of Joro spiders and live through it. They're like black and bright green. There's no way to miss them. And I guess they're probably more kind of like in North Georgia area. So I don't think you'll see these in South Georgia or Middle Georgia. But it is something to know. You'll see them everywhere and you cannot miss it whenever it happens. Let's see here. Okay, this was a new one for me. We had this one from a client that was in town this week from California. And so they said that left turn green signals was very new to them. They don't have these in California. And they said what a dream it is, or how much easier it makes commuting around town that you have these left arrow turn signals. And so that was really surprising to me. So I'm curious, if you're watching, are left turn signals normal where you are, or is this something new that y'all don't have? Because I think one of the most exciting things about this job and getting to work with people like you is whenever you relocate, I get to learn all of these things that are new and novel to other people from other areas that I just think are normal everywhere. So that is interesting. Okay, alligators or crocodiles. So you see me make content on Lake Lanier, which is a huge lake here in the North Metro Atlanta area. And anytime that we make a video on this, we always get someone that asks, are alligators common or are they in the lake? The good news is they are not in the lake. Now, if you're thinking about living in South Georgia, Middle Georgia, South Georgia, a big body of water, especially when you get down into South Georgia, yes, there are alligators, there are crocodiles. Funny story, we used to live down there and my husband and I went on a camping trip. It was my first time going camping and we went to the Okefenokee Swamp. And so we had our tent and it was like a state park. So you could go rent a kayak there. And they also had like little small John boats for fishing that were motored and powered. And so I had the good idea that we were going to go rent kayaks. And so we got into the kayaks, maybe got 50 yards away, and then just alligators like sitting right there on the bank and then like in the water. And, a kayak sits in the water. And so you're like looking at the alligator swimming right by you. No, that was not for me. So I told my husband, I was like, we got to turn around. We got to go get one of those motorized boats so that I can get away from that if I need to. So yeah, but if you live up here in North Georgia, that's definitely something that you're not going to have to worry about in any body of water. Okay, flooding. We often get this question about flooding. And for the most part, unless you're living near a river, and I say near a river, like on a river or on a big creek bed, you are not going to have to worry about flooding. You don't have to worry about flooding on Lake Lanier. You're not going to be in a flood zone, and you're not going to have flood insurance. This often comes up because we have people that want to be near the lake, but they don't want to pay for flood insurance. And so they're happy to know that the lake never floods. You have to know that North Metro Atlanta area, it's very hilly. So we are way above sea level, and there's all kinds of elevation that you have to take into consideration. And that's mostly why flooding is not ever an issue. I'm not going to say that occasionally you might not be in a very strange area where you might have a body of water like a stream or river that you're going to have to worry about. But in almost all the areas that I talk about, you would never encounter a house where you would have to have flood insurance. All right, so we have a good question here from Jay Acosta. What would the best metro area be to buy in with a $350,000 budget with a good school district? That's a great question. So I really like Hall County. So that's where Gainesville is. So in South Hall County, in Flowery Branch and Brazelton, you have Cherokee Bluff School System. It's a district that's a really good school. You might also want to consider looking into Jefferson. Jefferson has really great areas where you can get still, a decent amount of house for your money, and they have really great school systems. There's also dependent upon like how big of a house or what size house you're looking for. A lot of areas in Beaufort will still put you in that $350 price point if you're open to an older home that would still put you in some really, really good school districts. Occasionally you can find a house over in Cumming, which is in Forsyth County. And again, it might be a house that needs a little bit of work and some cosmetic updating, but Forsyth County has excellent schools. And of course, if you're open to townhomes, that really opens up your search to a bigger area where you can be in some areas like Swanee or even some areas of Alpharetta to put you in those school systems as well, where you're going to have more options. But then again, you're looking at a townhome. So good question. Oh, David, I love this question. Mosquitoes in North Georgia. So I'll give you my experience with this. Like I said, I grew up in South Georgia. Prior to us moving here 8 years ago, we lived in Brunswick, Georgia, on the coast there. And having grown up in South Georgia, having spent many years in Brunswick, the mosquitoes were terrible. So anytime the weather felt good and you wanted to be outside, like they would just eat you alive. And, big, huge mosquitoes that you're constantly, swatting away, and no amount of bug spray is going to keep those mosquitoes away. So when we moved here, we were outside talking to our neighbors, and it was in the middle of the summer. And we asked our neighbors, we were like, hey, when do all the bugs come? Like when do the mosquitoes come? And they were like, gosh, y'all don't feel the mosquitoes? Like they're here. And we were like, oh, this is amazing. This feels good. So we spend a lot of time outdoors. We love to go fishing and hiking. And I have to say that the mosquitoes are not anything like they are down in South Georgia or North Florida. So I don't know if you've ever experienced mosquitoes down there, but just know that it's drastically different. In my opinion, it's a lot less. We do have companies here that will go out and like spray your yard for mosquitoes, but very, very rarely do I ever hear of anyone actually utilizing those services. Obviously, people must be doing it because they would be out of business, right? But anyone that I personally know or talk to, neighbors, former clients, anything like that, that's something that I have not heard them talk about. Other common bugs that we have, we got this question, ticks. So I had a client from New York, and she said, oh, my kids can't play out in this backyard because they had more trees because they'll get ticks. And so wild ticks may be a concern if you're like hiking deep in the woods. Just having trees in your backyard or maybe an area that has leaves and stuff like that, you're not going to have to worry about ticks. I'm not going to say it might not ever happen, but it's something that would be incredibly rare to happen. We do get mosquitoes, occasionally. We do get ants. So fire ants are a thing. What other bugs do we get? That's really it as far as bugs. Oh, stink bugs. I don't know if you have those where you are, but occasionally you'll find a stink bug in your house. And if you squash it, it really does stink. And so that's a thing that happens here. So yeah, to think about any other bugs. Of course, you have spiders and other bugs that are outside, but in terms of like bugs that get in your house, that's the only thing I can think of. Maxine, you said, is Georgia a solar system state? this is a unique thing. So it's something that we don't see a lot of. I've definitely seen some homes with solar panels, but one of the things that you should know, and as I was talking to some clients from Florida and we were talking about their electricity bill and how much my electricity bill is, I was shocked. They're almost making a mortgage payment in electricity. And so I guess that might be the case for a lot of people across the country, depending upon where you're coming from. But electricity is pretty affordable here. So there's not the huge need or demand for solar as there maybe is in other parts of the country because the electricity bill is so, I guess, affordable. To give you an idea, I live in a 1960s built house. Thankfully, we're going through a renovation. I told y'all that at the top of this video. And we're getting our windows replaced and a lot of things like that to make it more energy efficient. But living in a very old, not energy efficient house, the most that our electric bill is maybe $220 during the peak of the summer or during the peak of the winter when we're running the AC or the heat on full blast all the time. And they were telling me that their electricity bill was like $800. So I don't know what the electric bill is like where you're coming from, but occasionally you'll see some houses with solar panels, but it's really not common. And I don't think that you're going to see that cost benefit analysis break even point that you would maybe in some other states. JJ works in IT. What are areas I can move where I can find good jobs while also avoiding the infamous Atlanta traffic? Oh, that's a good one. I think you're going to find a lot of options in Johns Creek and Alpharetta. So those are outside the perimeter. It's a very popular place for some IT companies that have headquarters and job opportunities in that kind of like area. And you're not having to go all the way into Atlanta or inside that perimeter. So that's a popular area for those companies to be. And you're going to have a little bit of traffic getting there, especially depending upon where you work, but it won't be anything near as bad as like having to go all the way into the city of Atlanta. All right. So let's see here. Oh, 2-car garages. I'm just curious if you're watching me. Can you hear my dog in the background? If you'll just let me know. I just want to know. So 2-car garages. This is something that is very, very, very common. In fact, it's uncommon not to have a 2-car garage. Now, occasionally you're going to see a 1-car garage in maybe, let's say, a townhome or in like an older house. It's probably like in a much lower price point. They may not even have a garage. It might have a carport. But for most houses that are $250 and above, you are going to have a 2-car garage. So that's a good thing. Whenever I'm having great conversations with y'all, they're like, oh, a must is a 2-car garage. And I'm like, don't worry. It's really, really standard here. That's going to be in all the homes. Yes. So y'all hear the puppy. So that's our new puppy. His name is Hank. And he has recently found his voice and loves to talk. All right. So this is a really great picture. I wanted to put this in here to talk to y'all about the grass right now. So this is a recent picture from the MLS system, and you can see that the grass here looks very brown, ugly. It looks dead. So if you're not from here or this isn't common where you're coming from, you might look at this grass and think, oh gosh, I need to like replant all my grass come spring. This is dormant grass. It happens every winter. It's going to turn brown and crunchy and it's going to look like it's dead. But here in the next 6 weeks or so, you're going to see signs of green start coming through, and that green grass is going to come back. You're not going to have to replant this. This current grass will turn green. I know in a lot of states they plant, or northern states, y'all plant winter rye, and that's not really something that is common to do here. But this is, if you go house hunting right now, this is how all the houses are going to look. But the good news is that the grass will turn green here soon. Okay, this is a picture of window screens, and we often will see in homes, some homes might have window screens on, but a lot of times you're going to see those window screens and they're going to be in the basement stacked up in a pile, or they may be in the attic, or the seller will say, yeah, we don't have our window screens anymore. And the reason for this is that those bugs that I was telling you about, the dust, the pollen, the things that are outside, When the weather feels good and when you might want to have the windows open, that's when that pollen is swirling around outside. Like I mentioned, when it feels good, that's when you want to be outside. You don't want all that pollen coming into your house, and it will come through those window screens. So a lot of people don't ever really have their windows open. So you'll see, especially new construction homes, the builder sometimes will provide screens. But like I have a client right now buying a house with screens, and the screens are piled up in the garage, and the builder's like, here you go. I'm not going to put them on for you, but you can put them on if you want. And a lot of people also don't like to put them on their house just because visually you see how that looks dark and grayish black. Kind of makes the front of a house dark. So you'll see a lot of people won't put them on their house for that reason as well. So just a reminder, and thank you again for being with me. If you are thinking about making a move or have questions about the housing market or questions about moving to Georgia, go ahead and make sure that you ask those below. That's what I'm here for, is to make sure that I answer all of your wonderful questions. And I'm so excited that you're joining me tonight and talking about all of these great things. If you're considering making a move to Georgia, I would love to know that. And I'd love to know where you're currently at as well. So another question that we get is about HOAs in Georgia, so homeowners associations. A lot of these neighborhoods are going to have a homeowners association, and a lot of them are going to have pools like you see here. So the great thing is that if you have a family, if you have young kids, it's fun to be in a neighborhood with an HOA that has a pool. They usually have a tennis court as well, because like this is going to be the place to be in the summer. It's really nice to go and enjoy it. And your HOA fees, and this is something that I hear from people, they're like, no, we don't want to pay an HOA fee. And then I'm like, wait, let me tell you how much it costs. So a typical HOA fee, let's say 600,000 and below, is somewhere between 400 to 800 for the year. And sometimes I tell that to people and they're like, oh, we pay 300 a month where we're currently at. So usually if you have a swimming pool in your neighborhood, you're going to have fees anywhere between $400 to $800 a year. Occasionally we'll see neighborhoods that are smaller that don't have or don't have a neighborhood pool. And those houses in that neighborhood, those HOAs will have like a lower HOA fee of $200-ish or so. And usually that's just enough money to keep up the entrance to the front of the neighborhood and enough to keep some good common rules in place to prevent your neighbor from painting your house purple or something like that. So that is something that we often get. What are the HOA fees where y'all are? I would love to know if you currently live in a neighborhood with an HOA, of kind of maybe what those fees might be going for, if that's for the year or for the month. Okay, this is a good one. So an agent on my team, Maitland, and I were discussing this, and her family is from Pennsylvania. And they said that one of the things that gets on their nerves whenever they're here and they're going somewhere is that we Georgians talk about how far something is in terms of minutes versus miles. And so let's say that some place is 20 minutes away, or maybe in other parts of the country, you would say, oh, that's, a 25-mile drive. No, that would be driving really fast. What would that need to be? Like, what, 15 miles? So they'd say, oh, it's 15 miles away. And the reason that we talk about things in minutes is because you can have a place that is on a map 2 miles away, but it could take you 20 minutes to get there, especially if it is a heavily populated area, or if it's a junction of a lot of roads and a lot of traffic from people coming and going from work and stuff like that. So you'll always hear people say how far something is in minutes, because it's going to take you that long to get there. Let's see. Maxine says, I'm moving to Stockbridge in the next few weeks. Well, that is exciting. Stockbridge is a nice area south of Atlanta. Catherine asks, do you find many homes with swimming pools in Alpharetta, Johns Creek that are generally highly priced? So Alpharetta in general is a pretty expensive place in the metro Atlanta area. On average, you're going to find homes priced in the mid sixes there as their average median sales price. And getting that pool is much more expensive. So, and it's also far and few between. Just homes with pools here in general are harder to find. They're also very expensive to build. So, I've been in many Facebook groups where homeowners are talking about getting quotes for pools. And because of the pandemic, because of the demand that happened there, a lot of these pool builders are on a year waiting list. And kind of like the minimum cost, usually to build just like a basic pool, is at 80 grand. That is expensive. Another thing that you have to take into consideration is the amount of land that you have in your backyard to fit a pool. And for some of these houses that have the land space, they're usually on a septic system. And then you have to worry about like where the septic system is in the backyard. Typically, they're in the back of the house. And so you would have to relocate the septic system in order to put in a pool. But yes, if you're wanting to have a house with a pool, generally you're going to pay a premium for that, especially if you're looking in the Alpharetta, Johns Creek area. Occasionally, though, you can find one that's decently priced, but usually the home needs a little bit of cosmetic work. But that's a good deal for you if you're willing to do that cosmetic work because you have some instant equity there. I guess Hank has an opinion on pools in that area as well. You can hear him barking in the background. Immersive experiences. Moved to Georgia about 5 months ago. I just got my appraisal back. It appraised about $25,000 over what I'm paying for the house. That is fantastic. Way to go. Does that mean I'm coming to the house with equity? Yes, that is exactly what it means. So that is fantastic. So what that appraiser is doing is they're trying to say, okay, I'm an independent third-party person. I'm going to evaluate what other homes have sold around you for, and I'm going to give you a value for your house of what it should be able to sell for. Now, I say should be able to sell for. There's lots of things that affect the market, but having that much instant equity in your house is fantastic, especially in this market that we're in. That means that you got a really good deal and that house was underpriced a little bit, or maybe there's some other circumstances that were involved. I have another client that is buying new construction right now. Their appraisal just came back $2,000 over what they're under contract for. So occasionally, kind of like a normal spread is to see the house appraised for a couple $1,000s more than what you're paying for it. And occasionally when you find really good deals like that, then you kind of get these types of numbers where it's $10,000 or $20,000 more. So that is a really, really good deal. Way to go. So Catherine, you said, yeah, that it sounds super expensive to have a pool. Although it does stink not to have a pool directly in your backyard, that's why you see so many of these neighborhoods have pools in the neighborhood for kids and stuff like that, so that everyone can enjoy it. And maybe it's a little bit of a compromise and there's some trade-offs there, but you're going to see a lot of solutions or neighborhoods that have pools. David asked, what city do I live in? I actually live in Gainesville. So I actually live up on the lake. We were able to get a good deal on this house before lake prices just went super crazy 7 years ago whenever we moved up here. But yeah, Johns Creek is also a really good area. My team and I, we serve kind of like all the North Metro Atlanta area. So we help clients from all over. And part of our process whenever we talk with you is really to ask you some like really detailed questions to find out what type of budget you have, what type of modern everyday conveniences you want, how close you want to be to certain stores or things, or what's important to you, and really help you identify what are those best areas that are going to help give you all those things that you really want. King's Home asked, what towns in Gwinnett County has best schools and low taxes? That is a double-edged sword. So Gwinnett County taxes are going to be less expensive than, let's say, Fulton County, where most of Alpharetta is. So that's a good thing. Johns Creek is also in Gwinnett County, and so you have a little bit lower taxes there compared to Alpharetta schools. Beaufort City Schools is really excellent. However, home prices there, pretty expensive because the school system's so good, but the taxes are low. So it's a little bit of a conundrum there of if you can afford to purchase a home in Beaufort City schools. But there's a lot of good alternatives. So you've got Mill Creek School District that I mentioned earlier. North Gwinnett School District has some really good schools. Swanee area is also, there's lots of great neighborhoods with tons of families, great schools in there as well, that you're going to have those lower taxes. I mentioned Hall County before. So the kind of like the south part of Hall County has some really, really good schools. I'm a former teacher, if you didn't know, and I actually used to work with Hall County schools. And so I will say, like, when it comes to good schools, I want to put like an asterisk next to that because we have a lot of clients that will go to greatschools.org and will look at the school rating. And they'll say, oh, I only want to be in an 8, 9, or 10 school district. And yet there's a lot of good schools that are rated 6 and 7 that people seek out here locally. Like they want to be in these neighborhoods to go to these schools because the school itself is so great. And you're only going to get that kind of information, that anecdotal information, directly from real estate agents, although technically we're not supposed to steer you to any one school or the other. So we always tell you to do your due diligence and do your own research. However, there's really great local Facebook groups that you can join that has, parents of kids that are in these schools. And so I always recommend that you get that advice directly from parents that have kids in those schools. The ratings that you see on great schools are comprised of test scores and diversity and, all sorts of things that really sometimes kind of skew the outcome. So I worked at a fantastic school in Hall County, Johnson High School, and it was the best school I've ever worked at in my 7-year teaching career. And I worked at quite a few schools because we moved a lot, but it had a lower rating because of some diversity things and low-income population students that we had there. And yet it also had one of the best academic programs in the county at that school as well. So you really have to get that anecdotal information from someone that lives in town. But I really appreciate that question. And so go to great schools, go to niche.com, join the local Facebook groups so that you can get that information directly from parents. And of course, I would always love to give you some great advice as well to help give you some more resources or questions to ask or people to ask as well. So, all right. Well, that is pretty much all of the commonly asked questions that we get about moving to Georgia. And we've also answered a lot of good questions here from the live stream. But if we have a question that we have not answered or something about Georgia that's on your mind, North Georgia, I would love to know so I can help answer that question for you. Go ahead and ask it below. Steven says, other than 55 plus communities, do you find retirees attracted to particular parts of town over others? Yeah, that's a good question. So there is a community in Brazelton. Well, it's kind of in Brazelton. It's kind of in Jefferson. The neighborhood is called Traditions of Brazelton. And so this is a really good example. It's not a 55 plus community. You have it's a larger golf course community. You have a lot of families in there, but you also have a lot of retirees in there. And the appeal or the attraction to that area is that you're close to great healthcare. The neighborhood still gives you a lot of the amenities of what you would get in a 55 plus community. So golfing, clubs, social clubs, there's a community fitness center, there's a clubhouse, you got great swimming pool. They also have a newly opened restaurant there as well in the community. And so that's a popular destination for maybe clients that are considering 55 plus, but they don't want to quite make that commitment to only being around 55 plus families or couples. And so that is something to keep in mind, that there are neighborhoods and pockets that have home styles that are more conducive to as an alternative to 55 plus communities. So ranch style homes or single family living, or popular floor plan here is to have 3 bedrooms on the main level and a bedroom upstairs, or 2 on the main level and 1 up. And so you'll see that in a lot of different neighborhoods. But yes, Particularly the areas are going to be centered around having good access to healthcare, and you're going to find that in a lot of areas of the North Metro Atlanta area. But if you're looking for more affordable places, you definitely want to look more on the northeast side of Atlanta. So that's where Jefferson is. The neighborhood is Traditions of Brazelton. There's a lot of 55 plus communities in that area. Brazelton, Houston area, Flowery Branch, Gainesville, those are all areas that are still pretty affordable, and you have really close access to a lot of good healthcare options there. So that is, thank you for that question. All right. Are there any other questions that I can answer for you about moving to Georgia or the market? Let me know. Next week on the live stream, I am going to have one of our preferred lenders, John Birchfield. He is going to be on, and we're going to talk all about your financing options, mortgage rates, what they're going to do this year, what we're expecting to see in the market, and how that's going to affect you buying a home, and answering all of those questions that are related to buying a house and financing your house in 2023. We have good news for you. The interest rates are coming down, and so that is a really, really great thing. So if you've been on the fence about buying, you might want to reconsider it. Of course, if you're thinking about making a move to anywhere in Georgia, I would love to personally help you. If it's not an area that we directly serve, we have fantastic agent partners. I want to make sure that you are in really, really good hands. And so I want to make sure that you're partnered with a really great agent. So if you're thinking about that, make sure you reach out to me and my team. You can find the contact information directly below this video. We love helping you, talking to you, and helping you figure out where in the world you're going to move to Georgia. All right. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you for our regular video on Sunday, and I'll see you next Wednesday with John Birchfield, one of our great preferred lenders, answering all of your mortgage questions. See you next week.